Member Week is here at Lowe's. Don't miss your chance to get up to 40% off hundreds of items like paint, tools, home essentials, and more. Shop our exclusive deals happening in-store and online now through July 18th. Not a rewards member? Join for free today and get ready to save more. Lowe's, we help, you save. Loyalty program subject to terms and conditions. Details at lowes.com/terms. Subject to change.
Have you ever seen a kid whiz by on an electric scooter and thought, wow, that is way too fast? Well, it turns out e-bike and scooter fatalities have doubled this year. Today in CityCast Las Vegas, I'm talking with Las Vegas Weekly staff writer Tyler Schneider about the local laws that have been recently passed restricting e-scooter and e-bike use, and why the Las Vegas City Council is considering similar restrictions in their meeting tomorrow. It's Tuesday, July 15th. I'm Sarah Lohman, and here's what Las Vegas is talking about. Tyler, just how fatal are e-bikes and scooters?
10 fatalities so far, according to the LVMPD. And luckily, there hasn't been another one since I wrote that story, and I finished that up in early May.
This was your story in Las Vegas Weekly.
Yes. So there were 10 deaths up until that point. But even 2 days before I turned the story in, I believe it was about 2 days before, there were 2 children. I want to say, don't quote me on this, I want to say one was 9 and one was 12 or something like that. And one of them was critically injured because they went through an intersection and a car hit them. And so it's definitely super dangerous. And I mean, I think any life lost is obviously not a good thing. 10 is significant in that I think it's just much higher. It's already much higher than what we had in the year before and the year before that. And so
in 2024, it was only 4 deaths.
Yeah. So it's more than doubled.
Yeah.
And I think it's dangerous because we keep seeing these devices just get more and more powerful. These vehicles get more and more powerful every year. When I was in college in the early 2010s was right when I first started seeing electric scooters, but they were so much less powerful then. And I think it was somewhere around 2018, 19 that states started to look at this and regulate it. And I think since then it's only the technology and, just the ability of these things to get up to high speeds. I mean, as high as for an e-bike, like 80 miles an hour, I heard. So wow. I think the danger's there. And we're kind of in the middle of a period where we're in the middle of being proactive and reactive. I think we're at that crossroads right now.
Tyler, my Prius barely makes it to 80 miles an hour. Like, that's pretty impressive. In these accidents, whether they're fatal accidents or there's injuries involved, who seems to be most often at fault? Is it people driving cars or people on scooters and e-bikes? Or is it pedestrians? Like, who's at fault and who's the casualties here?
I think that really depends on who you ask. I mean, if you ask people who ride scooters and are proponents of non-motorized transportation, more walkable cities, green technology like that, they're going to say that this is equally an issue between like drivers not being as educated about these vehicles, and then also just younger people who may not even be that experienced riding traditional bicycles or similar vehicles. And all of a sudden they have access to these incredibly powerful devices, and maybe they're even riding in bike lanes. But when you have that much power and you're not like an experienced cyclist who kind of understands how to navigate intersections and turns, that does create a huge issue. And again, they're kids. So it's like, a lot of them aren't even licensed to operate a regular motor vehicle. And so when it comes to who's at fault, I think it's a little bit of both. I think there are some drivers who aren't as aware of how powerful these things are getting and how they might fly past an intersection. But then at the same time, there's plenty of examples where a younger rider is going to ride through an intersection without really looking or considering the rules of the road as much as like somebody who's been driving a motor vehicle for their whole life might.
Are e-bikes supposed to be in bike lanes or not supposed to be in bike lanes?
I think that they are generally allowed in bike lanes unless it's marked. That can vary. But I do believe amongst different municipalities, both in and out of Nevada, that I've read and seen things about, I believe it's preferred that they're in bike lanes. Some places don't want them on sidewalks, but I think it's hard to regulate them off of sidewalks at this point, especially in Nevada.
Yeah, that's generally been my impression that both scooters and bikes and e-bikes are not supposed to be on sidewalks. They're supposed to be in the bike lanes. Yeah. But
Mhm.
you actually have a personal anecdote along those lines. It's something that happened to a friend of yours. Would you like to share?
Yeah, so it was actually on my birthday in early May. We were going out to get some dinner, and we decided to walk over to Griff's Billiards. But we were about to turn right onto Arville, and our view of the sidewalk to our right, where we were turning, was obstructed by like a brick wall. It was kind of near an apartment complex, and it was at night. And
Mm-hmm.
so we're turning, and we couldn't really see. And yeah, all of a sudden, I mean, it happened so fast. But my friend was struck on the left, on her left rib, and I just remember looking down at the kid and saying, I mean, he must have been like 14, 15 years old.
Mm-hmm.
It looked to me to be like it was his own personal scooter, and he was riding down the wrong side of the road, so like against the flow of traffic. He was on the sidewalk though, riding against the flow of traffic, which is another thing I've heard from people who are concerned about this is like sometimes people see it as safer to ride against the flow of traffic because
Hmm.
obviously they can see what they're doing. And this is, I think, more common with less experienced riders. But even as a runner, like I know that a lot of newer runners want to run where they can see the cars, but that's actually generally more dangerous. And so yeah, when he fell into the intersection, I mean, he was a young kid. I just went over. I'm like, dude, you got to get out of the road. He
Mm-hmm.
got up. He was aware. He wasn't hurt. Eventually, the kid looked over at me because my friend was kind of still had the wind knocked out of her, and so he looked over at me, and it was kind of I can't recall exactly what he said, but it was this understood thing where it was like, "Can I go? Do you want me to stay here? Do you want to get my information?" And I look over at my friend because obviously she was hit, and I think in the moment we were kind of just like, well, what are we gonna do? We didn't know the extent of the injuries. And so I was just like, yeah, you're good.
Yeah.
And so he carried on. But he was really shaken up, very obviously. And so were we.
Yeah. And I feel like probably a lot of people listening have their own anecdotes. Like I know stories of people on rentable e-scooters that have lost control and wiped out and ended up at the hospital too.
Hmm.
So let me ask, not only have we seen in Clark County more than doubling of fatal accidents, there has also been a doubling of accidents nationwide and injuries in about the last 10 years, essentially. So why are there more accidents now than a decade ago?
Again, I think it kind of comes back to the advances in technology we've seen. Another thing, though, is that I don't have actual prices on some of these vehicles like on the top of my head, but I've heard from the shop owner that I talked to and others that they're also a lot more affordable than they used to be. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I think we see that with everything as technology advances, things get more affordable. So it's more common now, I think, for parents to actually buy their kid their own device. I keep saying devices, but electronic scooter. More commonly, I think electronic scooters for children, but bicycles
Mm-hmm.
as well. And so now that they're just more available in a personal sense, I think that contributes to it. But also the fact that we've had the rideshare companies like scooter rental companies,
Right.
like Bird, for example. Like I said, those started coming out, I believe, when I was in college, so a little over 10 years ago. And since then, I mean, they've only had the opportunity to grow, expand, put more vehicles out on the roads, and so forth. And so I think it's just a combination of all of those things, but generally just technological advances.
So I think you make some good points in that this technology has become more powerful, it's become cheaper, but also this is it's for kids, not exclusively, but it seems like they're more commonly driven by minors who don't have access to a driver's license. Would you say that's correct?
Yeah, I think in the stories we've heard, that's the case. Don't think it's exclusively that though. I've heard from, again, the shop owner that I talked to told me that, he has some people that work on the strip who will take their vehicles in for repairs. And what he says is that it's a lot easier for them to get to work on
Mm,
those things than maybe taking a bus. Maybe some of these people don't have their own personal vehicle. He also mentioned, especially like construction workers who usually may have to park their vehicle a bit a ways away from the site that they're working on, so like maybe a mile. And so for them, he said he's met some who will either park and then ride their scooter over, or if they live close enough to the site for whatever reason, they might just take it there too.
There's nothing like when you get that part from eBay and it just fits. Yeah, the first time. So you can do less of this and get right back to more of this. At eBay, you'll find all the parts you need, guaranteed to fit, at prices you'll love. Sounds good, doesn't it? eBay, things people love. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
This episode is brought to you by San Pellegrino Ciao, a new kind of flavored sparkling water. The kind made with real fruit juice, a pinch of Sicilian salt, and the sparkle of the Italian sun. With no added sugar and just 10 or less calories per can, enjoy. With love, from Italy. By San Pellegrino Ciao now.
So, with all of that in mind, what do you think that the rise in scooter and e-bike deaths says about transportation in our community?
Yeah. Okay. So I do have a bit to say on this. So in my last stop when I lived in and worked in Lansing, there were a lot of non-motorized transportation advocates out there, and often they would tell me that a lot of the issues we see on roadways has to do with design, urban design. But I think there's also a bit of an educational component to it. I mean, again, these things are so new relatively. They're so much more powerful than what we've seen with traditional bikes and things like that. And so I think that also contributes a little bit to the issue that we just have this clash of, traditional motorized vehicles with micro mobility vehicles that are just so much more powerful than they ever used to be.
So these e-bikes and scooters are not exclusively driven by kids, but as you brought up, when these aren't necessarily trained drivers. Mm-hmm. They haven't gotten their driver's license yet. And even people on bikes, there are bike safety, programs. So should we be licensing kids? Should there be more a required training option for kids to be able to operate scooters and e-bikes on the road?
Yeah, so there have been some discussions about that in Nevada, but also in my research I found a couple other states that do have some sort of licensing practice. Hawaii being one of them, oddly enough. From what I've read on that, and again, I haven't looked into these too extensively because all these policies, they're very lengthy. But with Hawaii, I believe it's more so a one-time fee with that money to register that vehicle, and that money would go back to, I believe, their park cycling roadway fund. I also saw that Pennsylvania does as well. They do require some sort of registration. There have also been talks about, basically requiring some sort of licensing for this. I don't know how far those are here or elsewhere, but I know that's in the discussion.
So what laws have been passed here in Clark County that affect the operators of scooters and e-bikes?
Yeah, so Clark County in early May, they passed their ordinance, and Commissioner Justin Jones, when I talked to him for the story, told me that they wanted to do a little bit more in terms of, and this is a quote, in terms of defining what kind of vehicles can go on public roadways and implementing fines on public roadways. But basically that they weren't entirely sure, and there was, quote, hesitation by our legal counsel that we had the legal authority to do that without the legislature. But with that said, they did focus mostly on parks. So at this point, since that ordinance was passed and it went into effect on May 21st, generally e-scooters and vehicles with an electric motor, they're prohibited in county parks unless otherwise permitted. They have a classification system, however, for specifically electric bikes. And so this is actually fairly universal across different municipalities in different states, but it's a 3-class system. The first class is allowed, and those are pedal assist e-bikes that go to a maximum speed of 20 miles per hour. But the other 2 classes, class 2, would include anything with a throttle that has a max speed of 20 miles per hour. And then the final class would be your more powerful vehicles. Class 3 in Clark County is pedal assist only, max speed 20 miles per hour. So there's a classification system.
So basically, it's banning some of the higher powered vehicles within the parks, but there's both in Henderson and in Clark County to have passed those laws, but there's no laws sort of restricting, there's no laws that are affecting use on roadways at the moment.
No, most roadways do not have any bans. And again, I from what I've heard from Commissioner Justin Jones and some of the folks over at the city of Henderson, again, there's just some legal questions as to if they're able to regulate them in public roadways. However, in Clark County's ban, it does include a ban, I believe, on the sidewalks and the strip for e-bikes and scooters. And interestingly enough, this could be a later question. There are 2 developments that are actually happening tomorrow on this topic. So tomorrow, the Las Vegas City Council is actually set to consider and potentially vote on a similar ordinance that it essentially matches the Clark County ordinance. This is being brought forth by Councilwoman Nancy Brune. And so this ban actually also includes a ban on Fremont Street from Main through 7th Street.
Do you think it's going to pass, Tyler?
I think it will. It seems to me like they're trying to just standardize their policies with that of Clark County and even Henderson a little bit.
You set the table, put on a playlist, even made the lasagna from scratch. And now you're wearing it. OxiClean Max Force Spray tackles tough, set-in stains the first time. Adulting is hard. Fighting stains shouldn't be. OxiClean Max Force. It's not clean unless it's OxiClean.
I just MailChimped my marketing.
You MailChimped your what?
I MailChimped my marketing with AI to create an effective marketing campaign in minutes.
No, MailChimp and Way.
Yes, MailChimp and Way. Now I can hyper-personalize my campaigns across email and SMS.
You can do all that with MailChimp?
What did I just MailChimp and say?
MailChimp your marketing with the #1 AI-powered email marketing and automation platform, Intuit MailChimp. #1 based on publicly available data on competitors' customers. Plans vary. SMS available as add-ons. Visit MailChimp.com.
Okay, so here's what I want to know. What laws do you think need to be passed to better regulate e-scooters and e-bikes?
I think based on my conversations with both the Wheels on Rides owner and then some of the people from Clark County and Henderson, I think one thing would be, especially for the more powerful machines, e-bikes and scooters, to start perhaps even regulating those by having them registered. I don't know, I don't know what the threshold should be. That's not really my purview, but I do feel like that's one thing that was brought to my attention. Secondly, all of those people, all of my sources told me that there has to be some sort of additional legislative action. And obviously in Nevada, our legislature only meets every 2 years. That kind of makes things a little tricky for us. So I think the whole crux of the story was, now that nothing was passed in this session that just ended last month, or I suppose now 2 months ago, they're going to have to try to fill those gaps until we get to the next session in 2027. So I think pushing for that ahead of the 2027 session and, telling our legislators that local municipalities might want more authority to restrict these vehicles on public roadways, I think that is generally the solution that I've heard from them.
And are there other solutions outside of legislation?
Interesting. Let me think about that for a second.
Yeah.
Would legislation also include having somebody be licensed to ride these things, or would that fall under the same purview there?
Well, does licensing include I guess you could have a law that says everyone has to be licensed, but is that something that a municipality can do on its own?
No, I think that would have to come down. So that's a good point. That would have to come down from the legislature. I think other than that, education, this might be a slightly underwhelming answer, but I think education is also just important, both for drivers and for students. So like Henderson, for example, the Henderson PD now goes into schools sometimes, especially middle schools, and they'll put on some presentations and tell them a little bit more about how they can be safe. And then again, over at Wheels on Rides, they started their own safety program there, and that also includes maintenance. So the owner there, Joe Cantalicio, told me that he's having kids and adults bring in machines that are for whatever reason, like broken to the point where they're unsafe. Maybe they could still ride, but some of these kids and adults don't have also like the knowledge of how to maintain these vehicles and make sure all their equipment is still in proper working order. So they might get beat up on the roads and not really be aware that there's a part that's about to wear down. And so education, I think, both includes safer driving, telling kids about safer driving habits, but then also how to operate and how to maintain your vehicle so you're not going to have an issue down the road that you didn't foresee.
What are some of the positives of having scooters and e-bikes in our community?
100%. So there are quite a few, actually. I think the most obvious one is they're green forms of transportation. They're also, I mean, they are motorized, but when it comes to a push for more walkable cities, livable communities where you don't necessarily need to have a traditional motor vehicle, I think that's a big plus for a lot of people. Secondly, as I've touched on, there is a financial component to this. So there are some people who might not have a vehicle, or let's say they share their primary vehicle with their husband or wife or spouse or whatever it may be. For those people, it's a lot more affordable to have an electronic scooter, especially or a bike, because they're going so much faster now. I think it's seen as more convenient. And you also have to consider that like these don't have to, I don't believe, have to be insured. And so they're also saving on insurance costs. So even for a younger kid in college or late high school who wants to get to work, like I could see this being a very attractive form of transportation for them. And I think we do know, I don't have the data off the top of my head on this, but I believe the younger generations are driving a little bit less Gen Z than maybe older generations had. And so I think it's a combination of those things. I also mentioned earlier that older residents, we've seen some older residents, including in like the Clark County meetings where they were discussing this ordinance. There were some older residents who came in and essentially said, I can't really get out as much, but these pedal assisted bicycles, they let me go out, be in nature, see the scenery, and also get some exercise, but go further than I would be able to go on a traditional bicycle.
Tyler, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
And that's all for today here in CityCast Las Vegas. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend. You can also rate the show and leave us a review and subscribe to our morning newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Take care.